Good morning, good afternoon, or whenever, because actually we don't have the time. Let me get my act together here. Welcome to Inside Salem. I'm your host, Mike Allen. And on this show, we talk about the local issues and try to give more in-depth coverage than what you read in the newspaper and what's just around, and with different points of view. And what we don't talk about is presidential politics. This is the no presidential politics going. And to help
that might
with,
be broken next month, Mike. I'm sorry. But that can't be broken next month.
Okay.
It definitely is. I'm going after the guy. Bad.
Well, we're gonna bleep you out. No, in any event, we're talking about local issues, and we have assembled a team of panel here with Teasie Riley-Goggin, political analyst.
Thank you, Mike. Nice being here.
Tom Furey, former school committee member, former counselor at large, and current planning board member.
Thank you.
And attorney Jim Fleming, former Ward 6 counselor and current former school committee member.
Good to be here.
Okay. Some of the topics we're talking about this month are going to be talking about the Lifeboat expansion plan, MCAS repeal, cameras on school buses, and just zoning in general. Before we get into that, a long-time city councilor, a former city councilor and state rep
too.
Passed, and his son also was a city councilor, Bruce McLaughlin.
What's it?
Jim, you...
Yeah, I last couple of years I lived with him. He was up at Brooksby. And so I would many times eat with him, or at least say hello in one of the dining rooms.
Yeah.
At first, before he moved to Florida, the son was there a lot. And then the daughters picked that up, and they were very, very, very good. He kept his mind and his agility. He was in a wheelchair at the end, but you could talk it was a good conversation about Salem and Salem politics.
Okay.
Yeah, his wife was a great gal.
Yeah, she was. She did. Yeah.
It was cancer, and
Yeah.
but he had, as you say, he had two very successful daughters.
And
Yes.
they're very, very so.
Yeah.
Very good DNA. He was our state rep, as you said, Mike, and he was our city councilor, he was the essence of the best in politics. He gave a lot of time and effort as a city councilor, state rep. He was a good role model to his children. Scott became his son, only son, became a city councilor with me on the city council. Bright shining star, looks just like his father. He's living down in Florida now. And his two daughters are the cream of the crop. You couldn't ask real great people for Salem. One used to be the head of House 7 Gables, Nicole. Now she's the head of Salem Tourism for the city of Salem. And the other daughter of Bruce is Carla McLaughlin, who's married to John Keenan, the president of Salem State University. So it's a great family, great loss for the city of Salem, public service, elective office. He was a good role model.
Okay. I heard about just coming in here that there is a project that we've talked about much, mostly for its inactivity for many years. It was just at the corner of Bridge and Boston Streets, next to the Community Life Center. Most people refer to it as the Senior Center. Tom, do you have any updated information on that?
Well, TC and I did our homework. TC heard from a good source, and I had to back it up, make it back up. So I went down, as a member of the planning board, I went down this morning and checked on the planning department, and I asked Robin, who's the head of the planning board, and she said yes. The Switzerland site, the Gateway project on the corner of Boston and Bridge Street, got the green light for total infrastructure, which means the building probably would take place, some type of building would take place on top of the infrastructure, probably in the spring. Infrastructure now in the fall, the structure will be sometime in the springtime. And it was always been a very controversial area. Way back when, TC and Jim and I, you may remember, there was supposed to be an Osco drug at one time. Osco drug one time.
Right, yes, I remember that, yeah. And the
Neighborhood
Federal Street Neighborhood Association.
Did not want.
The
opposed
neighborhood
it.
went ballistic. They went ballistic.
Yeah, yeah. And it's
lo-
funny, they got a Walgreens across the street from
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
And lo and behold, the site that Switzer owns, the developer himself,
Yeah, but
that's been an eyesore.
Remember, Tom, it was David Massey was the owner of the property in the
Thank you.
beginning. And when, the OSCO and all that went on. And then because so many projects got turned down, that he turned to a bigger developer to bring in and brought him in almost as a partner or whatever he was. And they came out with the name High Rock. And that's what David Switzer, the name of his was. I'll bet it's we figured 12, 13 years.
Oh, at
I
least,
want to know
at
one
least.
thing. If they have permitting back there to build 117 apartments,
117 condominiums,
Condominiums.
not apartments, condominiums.
Condominiums.
no.
with commercial downstairs.
No, more,
What's
it
that?
was going
Commercial
to be
downstairs,
apartments
I
in the
think.
beginning and, if
It
I remember
was,
correct,
it
okay,
was-
either way,
Okay, yeah,
and commercial at the bottom.
yeah.
And he had hopes of having a restaurant. But that right now, if you look at Bridge down there with the Community Life Center, they've put up a fence across to the eyesore of what it looks like right now, and has for a number of years,
Yeah,
maybe 12, 13 years, we think. But will they take that fence down? Because part of the agreement was, that the parking would be used by both parties. The Community Life Center was supposed to be inside of that building.
yeah,
That was supposed to be a condominium.
right.
So when they built the Community Life Center, if you remember correctly,
Yes.
they also put up a little place, and some people thought it was an outhouse.
No, it was a condominium.
And it was a condominium because they had to have something according to law to say that they had a condominium association.
Right.
I don't know what the legal reason is. People who deal with real estate would be able
Well,
to
if you
tell
say
you.
you're going to have a condo association, that's what you're asking permits for, then that's what you get. But they never built.
Yeah, it was, what was that, like a 10 by 10?
There's no
back,
secrets.
Yeah, but
plastic
it
backyard
was.
No
shed.
secrets at all. I mean,
But the other thing is because of the contamination there from Sylvania and all the work that they did, and it was volatile chemicals. But they also had another one that everyone knew it around here. Beryllium was also used, and that was used, and many women who worked at Sylvania
and men-
contracted beryllium disease
and men too.
and died.
Yeah, I don't
My
know.
sister Helen worked there with former Congressman Nick Mavolis, who's the head of personnel there. She died of cancer. She worked there for years and years and years.
Because they finally started paying out to people for this, almost like with asbestos
Yeah, okay,
that they did.
okay.
But when the Community Life Center was built here, 3 years ago or thereabout, 4 years ago,
No, more than that.
give it 5.
Community Life Center, how many?
They
7
should
years,
have put in.
When did Mayor Levesque pass?
And that's when they built it.
When did he pass? Because they built it before.
They named it after him,
before
Gene
he
Levesque.
built it.
Yeah.
Before he passed.
I don't remember. I lose track of time.
Yeah.
It's more than 4 years. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Oh, it doesn't matter because
Yeah.
they're supposed to have a vapor barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And if they build this new one, I'm just wondering if that will be encouraged also, legally speaking, to have a vapor barrier.
Oh, I'm sure that's part of the permit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to see, like with our fellow over here who will tell us for the planning board, will they have to start from scratch all over because it's been so many years?
I think so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those
Yeah.
permits are extinguished.
Yeah, I mean, you get a
They're
permit, but it doesn't last ad infinitum. Yeah, and it certainly has to be enough years. And as far as I've known, I mean,
15
you would have
years,
known
at
they
least
haven't
15
come
years.
before you to renew.
Yeah.
And it's been, well, I mean, it was not long after Mayor Driscoll came on,
Soon afterwards, yes.
which was 2006. She was elected.
So 18 years.
Right.
Wow.
And so it's probably 2 years after that. So that would be 16 years ago because originally, she was talking about having a new senior center, which was originally proposed by her and some people to be down on Lafayette Street with St. Mary's was it
St. Joseph.
Yes.
St. which one?
St. Joseph.
St. Joseph's.
Yes.
And they would look at the other sites, and the other sites were much better.
Yeah, and then they ended up being there, and it was probably like 3 years later that it was approved, and then from there it went to, it just was stalled, and eventually they built the Community Life Center / Senior Center, but the other project, as I say, it's been sitting there for.
We lost a
14
lot of
years?
money. We lost a lot of money,
Yeah,
development money.
Well, the other thing, the reason that was selected,
yeah,
I was on the senior site committee with
Yeah.
a number of great citizens from Salem. And the selling point, and for the final votes that came from a couple of councilors, that if they voted the other way, we probably would have wound up down the Willows building behind Gnome Cake.
okay.
But that got turned down because
That was a good
the
site,
mayor's
because
point
you-
was that with Sweetser and Massey, they would be paying for this because the money would be coming in, the taxes and extra
Right,
money
yes.
that they would get.
And that ended up being completely false.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
not only did that
Absolutely.
end up being completely false, the other thing that was sold to the city council was that actually there was grants that we
Grants
had,
disappeared,
and they disappeared because they expired.
never used.
$3 or $4 million worth of grants, and so the taxpayers on the hook for that. And then the other thing that came into play is that one of the things they were talking about doing was a medical building, and the council at the time, Todd Siegel,
Yes.
I'd say
he correctly pointed out that, typically these medical things are usually tax exempt.
Tax exempt.
And so you would not be because Mayor Driscoll at that time said, well, although we lost the grants, because we're going to do this will be paying real estate taxes. And it was actually not correct. And I remember Jerry Ryan, who in the past has been a panel member on this show, was council president at that time. He negotiated with Mayor Driscoll to he gave a couple of year extension or whatever, as long as, because it was going to expire, a couple of years extension as long as there was something being built on, and that's when the shed showed up, so that it satisfied the letter of the law, but clearly not the spirit of the law.
No.
So that was that.
Hopefully next year something will be done visible for the sake of the city, because that's a blighted area.
But
It
here
shouldn't
we
even-
have a planning board member
Yes.
who went and asked about what was happening down there, and they won't tell him who it is or
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
Well, the council that really tried desperately to find out when she was on board, was Elaine Milo. She spent a lot of her time trying to get everything out in the open, and it was like hush, hush. Lots of things in Salem are hush, hush.
I can't believe that. No,
Yep.
it
Okay.
won't be hush hush if the neighborhood doesn't like it. It won't go.
That's
I
very
don't
true.
care if the
Very
I don't
true.
care if the infrastructure was in the ground or not. It will not go.
So, from this date, we'll watch it very closely.
All right.
Tom, that's one of your big things. The same as you did HMA.
Yeah.
You stayed after them and after them.
That is your
And,
mission if you choose to
get on
accept
this
it.
one.
Yes. Took me 2 years to get HMA torn down. 2
Yeah.
years. 2 years.
Yeah.
What a waste. Yeah. Looks good now.
For
It's torn
50
down.
years, man.
Yes.
50 years. I used to have there was a burger shop,
Yeah.
Yes, there was. Good
and I
memory.
used to go and have a shake and a burger there.
Yeah.
But I'm waiting to see, whether they're going to take land. They were going to take land and expend over there the road so that the right-hand lane would be open all the time. to
And this
take a
is where?
right.
Where?
And the lights, they did some, it went so long that they
Where?
put in new lights there.
Where?
So I don't know whether it's still in the plan.
What property are you talking about?
The bridge in Boston Street.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
the lights there now. You can activate across the street.
But I'm
On
just
Bridge in
wondering if
Boston.
they'll still take land and expand it. I don't
That
know.
took a long time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's two lanes heading towards Peabody from Essex Street, and one lane heading into Salem. from Peabody
Correct.
on Boston Street there at Bridge Street.
That's right.
And one lane goes, the heading again from Essex Street to Peabody on Boston Street. At Bridge Street, there's a right turn only lane, which goes down Bridge Street and also Goodhue.
Goodhue.
Okay. And then there's also a straight
No,
lane
not
which
Goodhue.
goes on to Boston Street.
You know what I look at is Dunkin' Donuts, because they often said, will Dunkin' Donuts close their shop there and open one in this new building?
Yeah.
And, Dunkin' Donuts through all of this, even with the building there, of the old leather shops and the
Yeah.
new buildings that are there, there it is going strong, Dunkin' Donuts, right? So,
Well, we don't necessarily know about an individual shop, and they might have be doing well or not. I have no clue. Okay. Next project we want to talk about is LifeBridge is revamping their plan, hoping to take advantage of a possible proposed zoning overlay. Now, zoning overlay is not passed yet. Is that correct?
No, not officially.
Okay. And again, zoning overlays are quite controversial because basically it says you have no zoning in the city of Salem. And so therefore, we'll just do what we want when we want it. If we can just get, if just the right people are proposing the project.
The neighborhood's trying to get 10,000 signatures in the Steve's Market, St. Mary's area, 10,000 signatures to make it like a historic area. So certain things can't go in or be done with this new zoning situation. So they're actively against it. They're working very hard with the petition to stop it.
Okay. So if they get 10,000 signatures, that really doesn't mean anything. It still has to go before the mayor and the city council, and the mayor and the city council can ignore them saying, oh, well, I may get reelected, I may not. But it's actually...
It's non-binding,
Right,
this petition.
yeah. But let me just make a recommendation to the viewing public out there. If you are interested in making your voice be heard in terms of putting the brakes on this project, there is a petition out there, which I didn't know about, a petition out there to sign, which, again, if you get enough signatures of Salem residents, maybe it will actually put a little fear into the elected officials that if they actually ignore it, they might lose their phony baloney jobs.
but one petition has already been sent in through the planning board with 750 signatures on it,
Yeah.
because the overlay is actually not a city ordinance that they're trying to push through. It comes through the state.
Okay.
And that also, if I remember correctly, means that it's going to need a different type of vote on it too.
8 out of 11. I think it's 8 out of 11. Super vote.
Eight. I don't think this is eight. Overlay is 8 votes.
A super majority. 11 members, 8 of the 11 passes. So that won't be easy.
It won't be easy.
What do you mean?
But
it won't be
the only
easy?
thing is they're
Who's
looking.
going to dissent? Who's going to dissent? It's a unanimous city council. I mean, the last dissenter, who normally is sitting here,
Yes.
but he's out of town this month. I mean, he doesn't even have a second vote anymore. Although he would have had. There's probably 2 votes on there now.
Yeah.
That seem like they're not necessarily in lockstep with the mayor's office, but for the most part, I mean, there's not. I don't see 4 votes there.
Interesting.
I don't either. I don't for anything.
Yeah, for
Anything.
anything, exactly. There's at most 2 votes.
Yeah.
Maybe you can get the ward councilor. If the ward councilor is concerned about losing his or her job, you might get that. So you get 3 votes, but it's still going to pass. It's really unfortunate that it's a veto-proof. Majority is just strong. It's already lined up with the mayor's office.
All followers, they no thought at all.
Yeah.
Something comes in, they put their hand up. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
But the
They'll
only
kid you.
Oh,
Oh
sorry,
no,
Jim.
I'm not going to vote for that. I'm not going to vote for that. bang, they will.
We needed more people like Groucho Marx.
Absolutely.
Whatever it is, I'm against it.
Absolutely.
But the only thing is, you'd be surprised about how people truly feel. You take, for instance, the one where on 80, 84, 86 Derby Street, where a council and family wanted to put in a distillery and a store and a restaurant and everything to do with it. Everyone figured, you know, because they jumped the gun and they went to the Board of Appeals first.
Okay.
But when it finally made round robin and came back and they voted, this happened a couple of weeks ago, because I was there with Arthur Sargent, myself, and a group of great people from Derby Street who were dead set against it.
Okay, so
And there, everyone thought it was
That was
gonna go through.
that was
It
an
didn't go
exception.
through.
That's right. Yeah,
It didn't.
absolutely.
It
Okay.
didn't.
Yeah,
No,
they will
they-
be, and they will be with an inside vote, an inside person, a counselor pressing for it.
Well,
right, yeah.
And they do have a very good counselor, you know, Cindy Nowak,
Chiswick?
yes, Jerzyk, yes. And the people that spoke up, they did a wonderful job.
Yes.
That's it, people. You have to speak up.
Yeah,
It's your city.
that's right.
Protect it.
Yeah, that's the thing most people don't remember, is that the mayor and city council work for them,
Right.
and they need to exercise that. They need to exercise that authority. They don't just say. I mean, so many people when I knock on doors, well, well, it's always the same. You know, why vote? Because I knocked on people's doors who didn't vote. You know, and they just said, it's always the same. No one ever listens, whatever. Well, they're not going to listen to you because you're not voting.
But you know, I'm talking now all the time. I'm talking about recall.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot of work for recall, right? A lot of people say we're going to have to wait until, the next election.
I don't
say,
think we
you
have
really
it.
don't have to.
We don't have any recall.
Yeah.
We don't have any recall.
I know, you talked about that, Jim.
We do not have any recall in the charter.
Yeah, so you can't recall
You can't
anyone.
recall.
You can't recall a person if they're
No.
doing a job that is not what you want.
No.
He should know. He was chairman of the Charter Commission.
You cannot, under our current charter, you cannot recall anybody.
Sorry, folks, I'm going to have to check on this one, and when next time we talk, I'll have more information.
He's the best source to go to.
Yeah,
sincerely.
actually, Jim really is. I'm not going to say
I'm
he's
not
gonna be
doubting
100%, but he's,
my learned friend.
I mean, he chaired the committee
Yes.
that examined the charter back in 2001.
25
2002.
meetings. 25 meetings.
2002, right.
Yeah, and
That's
and they went through it line by line.
line by line.
And
word
nothing
by
was
dotting the
voted.
I's,
It
crossing
wasn't-
the T's.
It wasn't accepted, was not voted in,
Right.
but they did study it. And was a recall provision something that was going to be added to
No,
it?
I know.
No,
It
okay.
was never an issue.
Never an issue. Okay.
But these 4 overlay districts, the first one being done is St. Mary's, the homeless shelter. If the first one is done, the domino effect would take place.
Yeah.
Salem State would take place. Shetland Park would take place. And South Campus, Salem State would take place.
Okay.
They will all take place. Domino.
So speaking of South Campus, is there anything happening with South Campus? Are they waiting for the zoning overlay?
They've had neighborhood meetings.
Yeah.
They've had a developer in Wynn, W-Y-N-N,
yeah.
and they're doing the courthouses.
And they've
Salem.
done a bunch of the buildings on Rantoul Street.
Rantoul.
Yeah, big time.
Big
Big
time.
time.
Big
Big time.
Beverly, rather.
Big
Yeah.
time, Beverly.
So they've had neighborhood meetings about parking and
Yeah.
housing and how many units there will be and so on. It's in the fast track.
And how many acres is that one?
Good question. I don't know.
15 acres,
How many? 15?
Wow.
only 4.5 are buildable.
Okay. And what about what's the acreage for the city Salem Common? Any idea?
So the what?
Oh, I
Salem
don't know
Common.
that.
For
Common.
the Salem Common.
Salem Calm.
No idea. Okay.
That's another one next time, folks. We'll have it for you.
I'd be
In other words, that's just something I can visualize. I can
Yeah,
visualize
yeah,
the
it's a
Salem
good-
Common.
it's a
good
So
picture.
is this? It's just and the same with most of the people out there. They say, "Oh, I know what the Salem Common looks
Yeah,
like.
right.
Is it 3 times the size of the Salem Common? Is it half the size? Or 4
Good-
times
good
the size?"
point.
I just think to
Good
have a
analogy.
visual like
We've done that a long
that,
time
makes it helpful. But so.
Well, didn't
So-
they say, what was it? Was a power plant and the land down there, is that what, 2 times the size of the common or twice, 2 or 3 times it? I remember
Don't
them
remember
talking
that.
Yeah,
about that.
Don't remember using the issue.
yeah, I didn't remember using that.
All right,
until-
we'll all do
'cause
our
I thought
homework.
I thought that was significantly larger
Yeah, it is.
than
Yeah.
the common. I would have said it was like 10 times the size of the common personally. Okay, but I don't know.
Well, I know you have to walk around it twice to get to a mile. Right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the Lifeboat expansion, they're hoping for a zoning overlay. You mentioned Shetland Park. There's another place that they're looking for a zoning
Yes.
overlay, so they can build in
Salem State College,
500
St. Corinthians. Yes, Shetland Park.
500
For housing,
housing.
high rises.
And-
And so South Campus. What do they have anything in mind for
They
building?
have the drawings already. The neighborhood meetings have the drawings and all ready to go.
Okay. And what's being
It's all,
presented to
mostly
them?
all residential. All residential. They'll tear down some of the buildings that are not being able to be repaired at
Yeah.
Salem State South Campus. The old St. Corinthians, the Harrington building, the Bates complex for Salem State students. They'll tear some of that down and build all brand new units, 3 or 4 stories high.
Okay.
But
And
is history, here we go, Mike, is it historic up there, the chapel and all?
No.
Good question. That used to be a chapel.
Yeah, it used to be a chapel, but
Beautiful.
it's not a historic district. Is that what you're asking?
No, I just thought, no. I'm asking if because of the chapel and everything, and it goes way back, whether that was historic.
yeah, well, it doesn't. What does way back mean?
Yeah.
How far
I don't know.
How far does St. Corinthians go back?
In the 50s, I think. 50s.
Yeah.
So it doesn't go back that much.
No, a little earlier.
Oh,
Earlier than
A little
40s?
earlier, yeah, 40s,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't necessarily be. And again, they closed down what 20 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah.
More, 72. 72.
More.
72.
72.
Oh,
More
so
like
50
50
years
years
ago.
ago. Yeah.
So they were only open 20 years.
And during the strike that we had for the teachers, near Harrington, we had negotiations there in the chapel. We used to sit in pews on negotiating the teachers' strike that took place back in the 90s under the Harrington administration. It was a 10-day strike, and we met there at the old St. Corinthians, but it's not historic. Not
Okay.
historic.
Okay. Okay. So you said there were 4 overlay proposals. There's South Campus, St. Corinthians property,
Shetland Park
Shetland Park,
in St. Mary's.
Lifebridge, which is St. Mary's,
Yeah.
where St. Mary's used to be. And what was the 4th one?
And I think you named it 4.
That's it.
You named it 4. Shetlands,
Yeah,
South Campus,
yeah,
St. Mary's,
that's it.
It's not Putinis?
not Patinis.
No,
That's
the,
private.
Well, I just know what,
The,
I don't care whether it's 4 or 5.
The one
or-
down at Shelter, right?
The shelter. Yeah.
Shelter.
Down where?
Shelter.
Shelter.
The shelter.
Oh, the shelter is
Yeah.
St.
I
Mary's,
think
right?
it's 4. I think it's
Right,
4.
shelter is St. Mary's.
Yeah.
That's one.
One.
You have South Campus, St. Corinthians.
Yep.
That's 2.
Yeah,
3 is Shetland Park.
Yep.
yeah.
I just want to know what the 4th one
I
is.
lost track.
I do.
Getting old.
Okay.
Well, we just know
Okay.
that.
So we know there's a 4th one out
it's
there.
it's not good for the city. This is not a good move for the city.
Well, as I've said many times over the years on this show, according to the Mass Municipal Association, and that is not a ultra-right think tank, it's not a conservative group, it is left-leaning, and they have said that the cost of one of these high-rises is $1.75 in services for every dollar they
Right.
collect in taxes, give or take a few cents. So the thing is this, it is a burden to the existing taxpayers of Salem when they build these type of projects. When you're building and that was one thing we've talked in the past about how under Mayor Driscoll we didn't have any low housing being built other than a few things that had to be in the project to make it go forward. But at least with projects like Bricks, which is where the old district court was, across the street from where Boston Hot Dog was, which is now going to open up as a French luncheonette. That project there is paying their fair share in taxes. And fair share is a word I don't particularly like to refer to it, but they're paying significant taxes because there's condos, high-end condos, and each condo is valued as such, and they pay taxes based on the valuation of the condo. So in that case there, that type of project pays,
Pays for itself.
pays for itself. Where a project like, Loring Towers, Salem Heights, does not. Now, that doesn't mean you can't build them,
Right.
but you need to, you can't have the administration coming forward like they have in the past and say, oh, this is going to give us more tax revenue.
Right.
Well, it does, but it's giving us a negative when you take out what it costs to service that. So that just keep in mind when you hear them say we're going to be collecting all this tax revenue from these projects.
But how about all of the revenue that comes in the form of different grants to each city that has a large amount of building the way they have in front of these do you think the businessmen turn their buildings over and we're not making money? They're not just not making as much money, but they knew they were going to get that money no matter what.
Okay, could
You
be.
could count on it. Yeah.
Could be. One of the city councilors wrote a letter to the editor about a month and a half ago talking about how the zoning laws are outdated and that we should basically just scrap them. And basically the why I interpreted it as the point of the letter was the fact that we should just scrap it and be able to build, big multi-housing units everywhere.
Goodbye, Salem.
Yeah, well, I mean,
It's goodbye Salem now.
Again, I just don't understand why. Again, we have, when someone buys a single family house, or in a neighborhood where it's so much density or so much non-density, they have signed in effect a contract with the city that this is zoned for such and such. Don't pull the rug out from under me. And this is what the doing away with zoning laws does. Again, do we want to have zoning laws that could allow someone to build a coal-powered power plant next to the city councilor's home or something? I mean, because we can do that. We can go back to the days of the early part of the country when there were no zoning laws at all. And people just built with it. You can see a lot of Salem as places where there's there's certainly no zoning for housing. I mean, you have this house here, and it's literally 2 feet from the one their next door neighbor, and with basically no backyard on either place. Yeah.
I had one single newspaper for the two families.
Yeah.
Well, they did that to preserve the land to build farm on, to be able to live.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
But the only thing is that right now I look at the council that we have, and this is only my opinion, not the opinion of the committee or anybody, other than the fact that this council is looking into things. For instance, looking into the things that they should be spending their time looking for ways to make this city more financially solvent and taking care of properties, not looking like for the city seal 200 years ago to find out that it was, in the pictures of the Asian and the Sumatrans and the Indians and another one on there I can't remember, spending all this time looking back to find out what they can do. What you can't change history. We've talked about this, Mike. You can't change history. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care what they say. You can't change history.
Yeah.
But zoning is the elephant in the room. I put that letter in to the editor myself. Zoning is the elephant in the room to get anything changed. But one good example of how neighborhoods can really react and make positive change is the historic McIntyre district. The St. James School is going ahead with their green light St. James School for apartments for low income. The rectory at St. James is all done by condominiums. The convent is all done by condominiums by the neighborhood. So they stepped in. They spoke up and they got their way.
Okay, is St. James School is going to be condominiums?
No, it's going to be all apartments.
Apartments. That's gonna be low
Done by
income.
CDC,
Is it?
Community Development Corporation.
Okay, so that's going to be low income apartments.
Low income.
Okay.
But the neighborhood went along with it, meeting after meeting after meeting. I attended
Okay,
some of
yeah.
those meetings myself, and it was very controversial what to do with the Node School
Yeah.
next to the Council on Aging and the Levesque Center. So the neighborhood was very positive. So democracy still lives in Salem. if you got a good neighborhood association, like the historic McIntyre district. The St. Mary's neighborhood is more of a challenging area. It's very challenging. That's why they're trying to do that petition.
Project. Here it is in the project you're talking about. They have an abandoned school, and they're going to have it into apartments. And there's actually even parking there.
Yes.
You know, because they used to have a schoolyard.
Plenty of parking.
I mean,
For a while.
For a while.
Well, they'll come in with something for there.
Oh, they'll probably build on it. You mean?
Yeah.
But okay, but at least
Absolutely.
so the building is there.
Yep.
The parking area is there. So it's just a matter of reuse of an existing thing. So that's to me less controversial than tearing down half a neighborhood, taking over a park and doing all this other thing. So that is a far more, the St. Mary's Life Bridge project is far more controversial than the St. James School project.
But Salem has two projects on Boston Street to help the homeless and the needy in Boston Street. The old Sports Haven that we remember on Boston Street.
Yeah.
One on the very end at the Peabody Salem line is for housing for needy individuals and families there. That can be done. But this neighborhood, St. Mary's, is a very congested neighborhood.
Right. But the thing is this, I mean, if you take a look at the Sports Haven project you're talking about,
Right near you.
I mean, that was a rooming house.
Yes.
So it's actually a step up from what it was, even
Yes.
though it's low income, very
step
low
up.
income housing.
Big step up.
It's really a step up from what it was before, as opposed to a step down. So that's that.
One of the problems is compounding zoning in Salem is the roadways. They were developed on the cow paths of yesteryear.
Yeah.
And there was no thought of changing it at all. Federal Street remains Federal Street. This street remains this street. And if you go to some of the developed cities in the country, most of them are grid systems. And they take into account that type of problem. But we don't have too much thought in terms of the streets in Salem.
Okay. Mass schools spent $27 million on migrant costs, and Salem has spent $1 million as of the end of February. It's an unfair burden on the residents to pick up the cost for this type of thing. To me, is it? I mean, am I being too harsh?
I don't think it's coming out of the school committee budget, per se, helping these new people coming in to Bates complex. That's being subsidized by the state, I believe.
That is.
And the school system, too, subsidized.
We had grants for it already, but to a certain extent it is. But what are you going to do?
Well,
Stop it, and then have the Army come in and take 18 citizens or potential citizens out of the country. I don't think that's fair.
I have a question. I mean, do we have a border or not?
We have a border.
And so can anyone who wishes to come to this country, do they have the right to come to this country?
No.
Okay, no?
No.
Okay, so who decides who does come to the country?
Judicial. It's judicial.
The citizens that are here already, right? And they vote to have a border that's
After
not
a
being
hearing.
enforced.
After a hearing.
Okay.
By the judiciary.
No, we have a border. We're letting people across the border,
Right.
and they're costing us a lot of money. Back in the old days, 100 years ago, when people came in, they needed to have someone saying
Sponsor.
they're not going to be
Sponsor.
a sponsor, and they had needed to have someone. They had needed to show that they were not going to be a burden to society financially. I don't understand why that's so bad.
But homelessness has a human face. My family was homeless.
Okay.
My family would have loved the Bates Storm to be all consolidated. 6 members of the family, siblings of mine, and my mother, single, father dying, leather factory, and so on. We would have loved the Bates Storm. Homelessness is not necessarily the border problem. It's people having problems. Families collapse. My family collapsed. Families collapse.
Again, we have a lot of American citizens who are homeless, and veterans who are homeless, and we are not taking care of them, and yet we are spending a lot of money taking care of people who have come here without permission.
It's got to be solved. There's no doubt about it. It's got to be solved. Whoever's elected is going to solve it, because I tell you, they're not either side is not going to put up with the tremendous cost of like Springfield, Ohio, or any place else. It's got to be solved.
Well, the other thing too is if
side.
I wanted to go to Canada, I had to show my passport to get there, go through.
What's wrong with that?
Right.
What's wrong with that?
But the other things, the other countries, some people, if they have their green card, that's fine. But the ones that are pouring into this country, and we hear about it all the time down near Texas in that area, from Mexico, and then we hear about by Arizona, pouring into
What's the difference?
and being bused from one community to another. When the government is not doing its job, keeping the border the way it should.
Okay.
I say, if they need it, it should not be the job of the National Guard, but their border patrol evidently was not adequate because they didn't have enough.
Bipartisan bill was beat by Trump. Now you want to talk about that? I'll talk about it. There was a bipartisan bill in Congress passed by both houses. Trump made a few phone calls, said that's going to take one of my issues away in this presidential election, and therefore the Republicans ran away.
That bill was going to allow 1.8 million people to come in illegally every year.
What's wrong with that?
Why should anyone come in illegally?
Why are you
can't they come in legally?
against immigration?
We had a board member here, a panel member here, who their spouse had to leave the country and apply through to come in legally. Why does someone get to jump the line? Why do people get to jump the line?
They're not. See, you think they are. Every single one of them has to have a hearing, and the hearing can be decided in a couple of ways, but most of them are political problems, political insurrection. They got no country.
Yeah.
So I mean, you don't. There is no such thing as walking in, Mike. I'm sorry. There's just. You think there is. You think there is. Why? That's.
There are people that are on the other side of the border. There are people on the other side of the border, and they are coaching these people to say, yes, I'm afraid for my life in my own country. Even though they weren't necessarily afraid of their life, they're coming here for a better living. And I don't blame them for wanting to be here. I don't blame them for wanting to be here. Why? Who in their right mind would want to be in, some of these other countries rather than the United States? But we should not be giving them public assistance, just like we did in the past. I just don't believe that's the case. If they have a sponsor, that's fine. But they're being coached by different groups that are saying, if you say to the Border Patrol person, you're afraid for your life in your country, they're going to allow you in.
Yeah, give them
and most of the people who get asylum court dates do not show up for them. So that in itself should say something. That should say something. That they do not get, they don't show up for court.
I'm not saying the system is perfect, but it's not a freeway. It's not a
it certainly
free flow.
looks like it to many people's eyes.
It looked like it on the TV where they watched parents carrying their children, and the people at the Border Patrol, because kids were passed out and emaciated and everything, coming and saying, I've got to get something for my child.
Okay.
I mean, they stepped back. It was right on TV and showed it. Reporters were there and everything. That, there's so much. They're not coming in here. Let's say they have not passed all the tests that they're supposed to pass. If they were on Ellis Island, they would have been put back on the ship and sent back to
They never did that. They never did that. They never sent them back. Never. Never.
Oh, won't argue the point, Jim, because I wasn't there.
I know about Ellis Island. In fact, my project at Deer Island was a convalescent stop before they got in, but they never put them back on a ship.
Okay.
They were called coffin ships. Coffin ships
Yeah.
coming over.
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
died.
Yeah, a lot of people died.
Okay. Okay. Next topic, MCAS repeal. There's going to be a question on the ballot in November regarding MCAS repeal, and you know, there's a case to be made either way. I guess we need to have some test, in my estimation. You know, where do people stand in this? You were a school teacher. You were a school teacher.
Yes, and I'll tell you.
You were on the school committee. I was
MCAS.
on the school committee.
I'm against MCAS because I felt that there were other standardized tests that were out there that we gave every single year, some form of them, to all of our children. But the best test that you have is, number one, if you have a teacher, make sure the teacher is a good teacher and doing their job.
And how do we determine that?
But there are evaluations, believe me.
I don't think that there were many evaluations before MCAS.
But no, I'm talking about if I was setting it up. But there was Stanford Achievement, there was the Binet, there was this, there was
I
that.
understand
But
that.
the best test I always said was, if I taught a science course or a math course, and after 10 days or 8 days working on it, I'd give a test to my class, and I see how it's going. And if everything looks really great for the majority of them, then I think, well, I've done a pretty good job. But if I look and say, boy, no, this needs help, or this needs help. If I give a test at 10 problems or 5 problems, and they can't do the majority of those and have success, then I better spend some time with that child. MCAS, they teach to the course because the test comes
That's the
out
problem.
with
That's the problem.
That is the problem.
That's the problem. They teach
But because the curriculum,
to the
the test
test.
that they have does not go with the curriculum that each town or
But we
state is
still have to
teaching.
have, Mike's point, we still have to have some measure of efficiency in the teacher corps. And we will not have it if we take out the MCAS completely. So you have to
Why the MCAS? Why the MCAS?
put something else in. Put something else
That's what I
in.
want.
Yeah, come up with a different name for it. I mean,
Right.
this is what.
Yeah,
Right.
the
Whatever
MCAS
the-
is
Oh,
a
yeah,
acronym
we've already
is.
done that. We have
Whatever it
MCAS
is,
too.
there should be tests today. Okay, fine. For you to graduate, you need to know this much English. You need to know this much math. You need to know this much science. I don't see why that doesn't just scream out logic that you need to have a certain amount, and you can't say, you know, oh, each school will determine their own, or each city, because what you have is you have schools in certain areas where it's known that 95% of the graduates cannot do math at the half the grade level of where they are, but they're still being passed on to the next
That's right.
year. And how do we combat that? What is the measure we can have? And yes, it would be great. When they did the Constitution, they basically said, if all men were angels, we wouldn't need this. I'm sorry, I messed this up. Do you know this quote?
No. The Salem Evening News is doing a great series of
Sorry,
articles.
folks, I just did a quote that
Please do.
was just right out to lunch.
Join the club. Senior moment. The Salem Evening News is doing a good series of articles on
Yeah.
education the last couple weeks there, and they're talking about how it's now virtual charter schools, online virtual,
Yeah.
subsidized by the taxpayers.
Yeah.
Then there's charter schools, public charter schools
Yeah.
that students have to go to.
Right.
Then you have private schools like Bishop Fenwick, St. John's Prep, and so on.
Yeah.
They don't have to take the MCAS.
Okay.
They don't take it. Public school kids have to take it. Of my 5 boys that I took in from DSS,
Yeah.
2 passed it with flying colors, 3 flunked it. So it shouldn't be the gold standard of one thing to pass high school diploma. It should be one of a series in your portfolio educational portfolio saying you passed it, didn't pass it. But if they did other things, true, you supplement. But testing is very critical. I believe in testing as a teacher.
But the thing is this, again, if you don't have some mandatory thing to pass, at least to my way of thinking, is that the rest of the stuff can be fudged.
Yeah.
Oh, do we pass them because they didn't have any absent?
No.
There was no absentees.
You have to have a yardstick.
Do we pass them because they have a good personality? Do we pass them because they try very hard? And again, all those numbers can be fudged, except absenteeism, of course. Although that can be ignored. So the thing is this: again, there seems to me that some of the colleges which did away with using SATs in their admissions are now going back to that. More and more colleges are going back to it because they realize they need to have some standardized, objective measurement of where the student stands in regard to with the student achievements, how well they're doing in chemistry, student SATs, which are just general on math and English, where they stand when they accept them into college.
But the freshman classes coming into MIT, Northeastern, some of these very prestigious schools are getting knocked down in diversification of their student body. It's getting more and more white than less and less minority. So it's a residual effect, a rippling effect by keeping a testing standard like MCAS, a requirement for high school.
Yeah.
So the Northeasterns are getting more white students. MIT's more white students, non-colored students, as you may say.
Actually, MIT is probably the biggest population is Asian. I mean, that's there's a push there to limit. You read about all the time. The different Asian groups have been suing MIT because they're being blocked out because because of quotas.
And China's cutting back too, on their quota coming over to MIT, China.
Okay.
And, we're all saying the same thing in a different manner. Learning a recipe for a successful ingredients. If you put the right ingredients and you follow the rules and regulations, then maybe you'll come up with something successful when you make it. Learning, you need a recipe for it also. For instance, when I was teaching, I taught here in Massachusetts, and they were teaching civics then. I use civics because it's one of my most favorites. The civics books that we had here that we used were the same ones that I used when I was teaching in Florida. They were also the same ones that when I went to Chicago to visit a professor friend of mine, I asked her about the books that they used at civics, and she said she named some of the ones that they had. There should be something that we follow that is uniformity. When you train people like in the service, there's a certain amount of training that they have, and it's the same worldwide practically. We need, uniformity. But the idea that MCAS, if you sat down with all the people that are affected by MCAS, and the ones most affected by it are our children. You ask a child or a student some nice questions and have a conversation with them, you'll be amazed at how much you can learn and how you can come up with the right ingredient for learning.
Okay, so again, you're going to come up with a different test that's not MCAS.
Right.
And we're going to take it. We're going to name it MCAS because we already have that name copyrighted. So we can change the questions on MCAS. It's still a test that is required to illustrate a certain proficiency in of certain subjects that says this person is ready to graduate from receive a diploma that says this person has passed minimal standards, this level of standards to a proficiency.
To move on, either to graduate or not graduate.
Yeah.
But the other thing is the same as you, Jim. You had to pass, the bar, in order to become an attorney.
That's right, I did.
Yeah, I
God
know
bless her.
that. But, you know,
And you had to pass tests to become a teacher.
yes, I did. But the only thing is, I had to pass all the tests to step up to becoming a teacher, and I had to go. But I passed bit by bit by bit. But there wasn't one test that I took that they said, that's it. When you have a child who is not really a good test taker,
Yeah.
but can do every single bit of work that you give them in the classroom and has for a number of years, then you better take a good look at the test that that child's having. Maybe the child should sit down.
Actually, the number of students in Massachusetts, I read this recently, that do not graduate because of MCAS is approximately 1%. So it's not a major problem. And it just seems like, rather than fighting it, that maybe we give these students some remedial help.
This is what I'm saying. You get those children that they're saying is not going to
I read the
pass.
same article, and you're right. It's a very low number.
But what
Yeah.
happens is
Right.
the kids usually drop out. They don't. They get no.
Well, again, and that shows that the school's not doing their job. The teachers are not doing their job. But without,
And the parents, get the parents in there. The parents have a job too.
that's true. But you can't,
Today's
the parents are
parents-
not being paid by taxpayers.
Right.
So we don't have any control over the parents.
The teachers only have that child for approximately 5 hours a day.
Well, I understand. But again, the parents are not being paid for by taxpayers. And they could say, yeah, we don't care if my kid drops out of school and gets on welfare. I don't care if my kid drops out of school and pumps gas or works at McDonald's. They could say that. But it's the job of the school to engage that student as best as possible and to prepare them to move on so that doesn't happen.
It's all part of the ingredient.
But again, it's unfair to even to that student in a way. I guess.
This ballot question is not the answer. That's all I'm going to say. It is not the answer because there should be a measure, and there is no measure in it. This just does away with it. Now that's wrong.
Yeah.
You have to have some measurement to what success has a kid made
And
in learning.
we need to measure the teachers. Most occupations have, standards and performance standards.
I never saw that. MCAS has a whole slew of teacher measurements. I never saw it once done in Salem. Not once.
Really?
Not once.
Yeah. I do know that Salem, people who haven't watched the show in the past and whatever, the city of Salem is amongst the highest spending per pupil in the state, and we were in the bottom 20% thereabouts in performance. And and we have been. It's not like it's just the first year that we're at the top. We have been for years, and we've been in the bottom. We would have put into receivership, except the administration, the mayoral administration, did a few magic tricks. After all, this is Salem, and reset the clock. Once with taking Bentley School and turning it into a academy charter school, and then the other with Nathaniel Bardage School, which they just dissolved the whole school entirely, and replaced it with
Nothing.
Horseman.
Yeah, Horseman School. They just moved that into the building.
Yeah.
So they just dissolved it, and again reset the clock. So they gave us 3 years to get our act together, again, or 4 years, I forget which. So without that sleight of hand, the state would have come in and taken over the Salem school system and put us in receivership. That's how bad we were doing.
That's correct.
Again, there has to be some accountability, because if there isn't, we're cheating the students.